Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. In one of my recent videos you might have seen me making some gorgeous jars using Aqua Cast Resin and engraving them on the xTool F1 with the Rotary tool. I loved the process so much it got me wondering about using Aqua Cast Black and engraving photographs onto them. So that's what I'm going to be trying out in this video. I'm also going to be trying coating one of the jars with resin to see how that turns out. So if you're curious too, stay tuned and enjoy the video. Right, before I could engrave my jar, I needed to make my jar. And so here I am mixing up my Aqua Cast Black. Aqua Cast Black is from Elichem Resins and it works wonderfully with the xTool F1. Once I'd thoroughly mixed the powder and the water together, I poured them into my mould. And this mould is from Amazon. It's just a straight-sided jar mould and lid. I thought the straight-sided mould would work really well on the Rotary tool. When I'm using my Aqua Cast Resin in my moulds, I do like to add it a little bit at a time. It works well if you can squeeze around the bottom to release any trapped pockets of air. Then just continue adding the Aqua Cast a little bit at a time, tapping the sides of the mould all the time to make sure the little air bubbles are rising to the top, and that should work out very nice and smooth when you demold it. And as if by magic, we've jumped forward an hour in time and it's time to take it out of the mould, and let's have a look. And there it is, all nice and smooth with a nice even colour distribution because I used the Aqua Cast Black. You can use regular Aqua Cast and add your own black pigment and that works very nicely too, but there's always a danger that if you don't mix it enough, the distribution of colour won't be even. But it takes the worry out if you use the Aqua Cast Black. So here's the photo I'm going to be using today, taken 7 years ago on the happiest day of my life, and I love it. It's my favourite of all my wedding photos. So that's what I'm going to be attempting to use today. So let's get the photo ready. I'm on the xTool Creative Space app on my iPad. Unfortunately, you can't see where I'm pointing because it's an iPad, but yeah, you can hopefully get the idea. I've chosen the rotary attachment instead of the base plate, so it changes the layout of the screen. And I'm using the roller today, so I selected that too. Here's my photograph, and I just need to rotate it. And then the way I like to size it is to get the rectangle shape from the shapes menu and change the size of the rectangle to the dimensions that I've already worked out for my jar. And then that can be used as a guide to get my photograph to the right size. Once I was happy with the size of the photograph and the position of the rectangle, I highlighted them both together at the same time just by dragging my finger across, and then you get the option to create a mask, and that rectangle becomes the mask and makes the photograph the same shape as the rectangle that I made before, if that makes any sense at all. It would be so much easier if you could see the arrow where I'm pointing each time. Right, so once I had my photo the right size, I needed to go to the adjustments option where you can change the grayscale however you want it. Now, I'd already done one practice one and it turned out a little bit dark. It was nice and it worked really well actually, but my plan is to add resin to my jar and that darkens it. So I actually wanted to make it even lighter than, what looks pleasing to the eye. I was just thinking about that resin going on top. So yeah, I just adjusted it with that in mind. So it's not perfect photo quality, but yeah, like I said, it's because it's going to be getting darkened. So here's the important bit. If you're etching a photo onto a dark surface, you need to invert the photo after you've got it just how you want it. And that's the option just underneath where it says grayscale on the adjustments section. There it goes, inverted. So here are the settings I went for. I used the blue light, dot duration 810, power 100, dots per inch 402, one pass, and the bitmap mode is Jarvis. And I also do mine bi-directional. Right, let's get it ready for engraving. I've got my RA2 Rotary tool here, and I'm just plugging it in on the side of my xTool F1 and then positioning it and lining it up to the guidelines that are on the F1. And so that's as easy as that is, all in position. Then I took my jar and placed it onto the rollers. So once it's sitting on the rollers, the first job you need to do is focus your laser. And I used the knob on the side, which I'll show you in a minute, to make it go up and down. There'll be a blue dot and a red dot. When those two dots meet and join together, you know it's focused. So you probably can't see very well. It's just right on the top, and from this angle you can only just see it. But yeah, that's what I'm doing here, just focusing the laser. Once it was focused, I selected the framing option, and then it gives you the blue line going from left to right, showing you the position that it's going to be engraving in. So at that stage, that's when you can move your jar to make sure that the guidelines from the framing are in the right position. Once I was happy with the position, I pulled down the screen and pressed go, and then it engraved. It took about an hour and 15 minutes, I think. It was quite a slow process. And here's the knob on the side which I was adjusting for the focus, and that's also the knob that you press to make it start. And there it is, it all started. Let's go into a time lapse. There we go, that's a bit quicker. Okay, let's have a look to see how it turned out. And there we go. You'll see it better soon. So, right, when you first saw the jar come out of the mould, it was very smooth, wasn't it? But I think what happens is right below the surface where it touched the mould, there were bubbles that you can't see normally. But the laser, I think, maybe exposes those surface bubbles that were just not surface bubbles. Does that make sense? Just beneath the surface. So yeah, it was a little bit pitted, but don't worry, it will look better soon. So my plan is to cover this with resin just because I was curious. In reality, it doesn't need it. It looks brilliant just the way it is. In fact, yeah, I'm not even sure that I preferred it with the resin on, but we'll see. We'll see what you think later. So yeah, before I can put the resin on, I need to seal it, and I'm using HydroFlow sealer. The reason I'm sealing it is because there could be some moisture still in the jar, and when I put the resin on, if there's any moisture still in the jar, it will come up and cause the resin to be bubbly. And so by sealing it and not sealing the bottom, I've left the bottom unsealed just in case there's any moisture left in there. It can still get out through the bottom. So yeah, any moisture will get out through the bottom but not through the sides because it's sealed, and then it should be safe to put my resin on. And you can probably already see just by sealing it, it brings out the definition in the photograph really nicely. In fact, if I wasn't putting resin on, I would probably use wax to seal it, because wax really does bring out all the colour in the images and the definition in images and whatnot. So yeah, I do like using wax on Aqua Cast, but obviously I'm going to be putting resin on, and if I put wax on, it would resist the resin. So yeah, that's the reason for using the HydroFlow sealer from Elichem Resins. So the next job was to engrave the lid, and I just put together this design in the xTool creative space using one of the borders that they have in there and just some text. It was very simple, and you can see my settings there on the side. Now, because the opening of the lid mould was the top of the mould, that's the raw part of the resin, which is unfortunate. I would have preferred it the other way up because, yeah, I wanted the top to be smooth. So I had to sand it, and it's not smooth. It's quite pitted, unfortunately, but it doesn't really matter too much because I'm going to be coating it with resin and you won't see that. So let's engrave it. And with the wonders of time-lapse, it only took a few seconds, but in reality, the lid took about 20 minutes. And here it is. It looks really off-centre there. Actually, it wasn't too bad. I think it's just an optical illusion because it wasn't too bad at all when it was finished. Anyway, here's the two jars. My first one, which you didn't see me doing, where I said it was a little bit dark, and the second one, which you did just see me do, which was a bit lighter, and that's the one that I'm going to coat in resin. So I've put my jar on my cup turner and I've mixed up some resin. The resin is a fast cure resin, which works well when you're turning it because it's thicker and it doesn't drip off as much as a thinner resin would. So yeah, just added a little bit, smoothed it around all over till it was all covered, made sure I hadn't left any bits, and I tried hard not to faff around with it so much. I am a bit of a faffer with the cup turner. I keep going back to it and checking, and I always seem to find something wrong and then start faffing again. And yeah, I tried to stop myself. And yeah, I think really with hindsight, I added a little bit too much resin. It came out a little bit uneven, but other than that, it wasn't too bad at all. Right, let's have a look to see how it turned out. I was quite excited to have a look at this. I'd been, like I said before, I was just curious to see what would happen if it was covered in resin. And yeah, look how smooth that is. The picture doesn't stand out quite as much as it does with the one without resin, but it's got a lovely finish, hasn't it? Really glossy, and yeah, I like it. Like I said, I'm not sure if I prefer it with or without the resin, but now at least I've satisfied my curiosity, haven't I? And I know that it can be done, and you can still see the engraved image, and yeah, it works, and that's all I needed to know. So the links and discount codes to everything I've used in today's video will be in my video description, so be sure to check those out, especially if you're interested in the xTool F1, because you can get a really good discount if you just check out my information in the video description. If you've enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to, and I will see you again next time. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.